Last year, it was estimated that 1 in 4 of all hardcover suspense thrillers was written by my next guest. He is the first author to receive 5 million ebook sales, and he holds the Guinness record for the most #1 New York Times bestsellers of any author. He is James Patterson. He is also the current best-selling author in the young adult and middle grade categories. For the past decade, he has been devoting more and more of his time to champion books and literacy outreach. You may know him for his Alex Cross mysteries, but today he wants us to know him as the man who gets kids reading. Thank you so much for having us in your house. I'm going to call you James. I hope that's okay with you.
Sure. That's
okay.
what my mom called me.
Okay. Well, your home is absolutely beautiful, and I know you're here in South Florida now pretty much year-round. Is that?
Yeah.
So we're
here almost all year, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you are a neighbor.
And hopefully a good neighbor.
You are a good neighbor. And you restored this home. How long did that take you?
It took 18 months, which actually was a miracle because this thing was a wreck. You know, from the outside, it's sort of obnoxiously big, but inside, as you can tell, it's just gorgeous in terms of the ocean views.
Yeah, and you and your wife, Sue, really did that a lot on your own.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, I mean, a lesson of marriage or whatever, successful marriages, there is nothing in this house that we didn't agree on. Every knob, every doorknob, we said, yeah, that's good. And if we didn't agree, we didn't do it.
Well, so then you're life partners because you got through it.
Yeah, we are life partners.
And you have a son, Jack.
We do.
And certainly he's growing up.
14 years old.
He's 14.
Yeah.
And he's a great kid, huh?
He's a very nice boy. So far, so good. And we're taking lots of pictures so that when he turns bad, we'll have the pictures to look at.
To remember.
Yeah.
Well, he certainly is growing up differently than you have.
Yes.
Your humble beginnings. Let's talk a little bit about that.
My humble beginnings. Well, when I was younger, I was small. When I was a baby, I was little. I grew up in a river town.
Are you being facetious, or are you saying like you were actually a small? Okay.
No, a river town in upstate New York. Upstate New York, sort of anything north of New York City. So we were about 60 miles north. A town called Newburgh. Tough town, river town. Recently has been named murder capital of New York State. Not so happy about that. When I was a kid there, it was named the All-American City. Very beautiful, big main street, 8 lanes to get down to the Hudson River. And it was, it was tough, but it was also idyllic. It was beautiful in terms of looking at the water. I think that's why I still want to look at the water.
Yeah.
Now it's the ocean instead of the Hudson River. Went to Catholic high school, Catholic grammar school. Tough. Difficult, but really prepared you for the world very nicely.
Yes.
Wasn't a big reader as a kid.
No.
I did very well in school, but wasn't a huge reader. I think they gave us the wrong kinds of books to read. They weren't the kind of books that would turn us on. And that's why I'm very big on getting books to kids that they're going to love. And then they'll become good readers, and then they can branch out.
Yes.
But the initial thing is just getting to be good readers.
And who motivated you to really start reading?
My big motivations as a kid were my grandparents. My grandmother was, she basically said you can do just about anything you want to be. She said, you're not going to get in the NBA. You won't be a basketball player. I could dunk when I was a kid, but she said that's not what's going to happen. But she said you can do a lot of things. And my grandfather, just a terrific guy. I used to, when I was a little kid, I used to go in his delivery truck. He delivered frozen food and ice cream. And every morning, or in the summer, he would take me one day a week. And we would get up at like 3:30 in the morning and pack the truck. And by 4:30, we'd be on the road. And that's not the most glamorous thing in the world. But he was just a very joyful guy. And he'd be driving over the Storm King Mountain to work, and he'd be singing, all the songs of the day, Oh, Susanna, and put another nickel in the Nickelodeon, things like that. And he said to me, he said, Jim, I don't care what you do when you grow up. I don't care if you become the president or a surgeon or if you're a truck driver like me. He said, just remember, when you go over the mountain to work in the morning, you got to be singing. And I do.
And you do every day.
And I hope everybody watching this, when they go to work in the morning, that they're singing.
Are you going to sing for us today?
Probably not.
Well, you know, it seems like yesterday when you talk about those stories.
I need a band. I need a piano.
You need backup. Yeah. You know, when you talk about the stories that I know for me, when I tell a story from my childhood, it seems like yesterday. But did you ever imagine, as that boy, as little James, that you would have the success that you have today? No,
and I still don't. And I don't think about it that much. I mean, I think like a lot of successful people, part of it is a couple of lucky bounces. Mm-hmm. I think you know, it's a lot of hard work and then some luck, you know, but so much of it is luck. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wasn't a huge reader as a kid. I certainly wasn't a writer, and just along the way, I got a little bit of encouragement. And somebody said you're lucky if you find something in life that you love, mm-hmm. and then it's a miracle if somebody will pay you to do it. And that's the way I was about writing. I found that I loved to do it. I loved to write, tell stories in particular. And then I found that I could actually get paid to do it. So mm-hmm. that was, you know, just heaven.
And you were a storyteller as a kid. You would be.
I was a storyteller as a kid. Yeah, we lived in the country. There weren't a lot of kids around when I was little, and I used to just wander through the woods and just make up stories all mm-hmm. the time.
And in college, what did you study in college?
I was an English major, mm-hmm. Undergraduate. The funny story, when I was an undergraduate, I took one writing course, and the professor said, you write very well, but stay away from fiction. But then in graduate school, I went to Vanderbilt, and I had another creative writing professor, and he said, no, write fiction. You write very well.
Before you started to write, you had some interesting jobs. You were had a career in advertising at J. Walter Thompson. 20 years you were there. Let's talk about that a little.
Yeah, I was at J. Walter Thompson for quite a while. I wound up being CEO of North America, which was about 70% of Thompson's business. At a certain point, it's interesting, I mean, just how interesting to me anyway, how I wound up leaving there. I had been involved with a woman, lived with her for 7 years, and she developed a brain tumor. And then for 2.5 years, she was very, very sick. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful relationship. I couldn't imagine anything, you know, that would have been any better. And after she died, I just threw myself into work, and that's when I sort of, you know, zoomed up at J. Walter Thompson. I went from being a writer to being, you know, creative director to being CEO, et cetera. But at a certain point, I was writing novels, and I was CEO, and I went, the best thing in my life was being in love with this woman, and I'm not trying to find somebody else. Mm-hmm. And the reason I left Thompson was to find somebody.
Really?
That was it. I mean, I was financially, I was comfortable.
So it wasn't a career.
But I just said no. I just said we've done this enough, and I don't have time to do this. So I went looking, and I was so lucky because I found Sue.
Yes.
And you know, and we have the one boy now, and mm-hmm. Been married for 15 years, and it's great.
Let's move on a little bit to some of the successes in your life. Not only are your books hugely successful, obviously, with your adult market, but also with the children's market, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But your movies, really incredible. A lot of your books have been turned into major films. In 1997, Kiss the Girls. Yeah,
we've had good luck, reasonable luck in Hollywood. We had Kiss the Girls, we had Along Came a Spider. We have a new one coming out in October called Alex Cross. Mm-hmm. And Morgan Freeman was in the first two.
Right.
And Tyler Perry is going to be in this one, which is, you know, kind of a shock to people. He does great.
So what influences your writing? I mean, do you think about things like, I know for me, my most creative time is when I'm sleeping, because then I don't hear the world.
I do most of my writing when I'm sleeping.
Do you?
I don't.
Well, I mean, characters could kind of, you could dream.
As I said, I love to do it. Michael Connolly, who's a very good mystery writer, said that what happens in Jim's books is that every single scene is written to move both the plot and the character forward, every single scene, and to turn on the movie projector in our heads. And I think actually the kids' books are the best of all, and I think they are approaching significance. Mm-hmm. Especially, I mean, Maximum Ride is a really good series. And this series that I'm doing, this middle school series, starting with middle school, The Worst Years of My Life, and then the recent one, the new one is Middle School, Get Me Out of Here. Mm-hmm. And they are, once again, they're very funny, they're very good stories, and they're surprisingly emotional.
Yes.
When we took them out to Hollywood, and we just sold them into Hollywood, that series, And every studio, they went like, you know, this is very funny, and we can't believe how emotional it is.
Now, did Jack influence you, your son Jack influence you, having a son really make you want to write children's books, or what really got you started?
I think there were two things. One, the fact that I had a son, and that I was watching his reading or not reading, and his friends. And I also, at that point, I had an agent who had kids, and she said, you really should write kid stuff, because that pacing is what kids need and love to read. And my own theory about getting kids reading, and I'm sure we'll get into this some more, but is the more they read, the better they get at it. And you just have to give them books that they're going to gobble up and then ask for another one.
Right.
If you don't do that, you are shortchanging your children, and we'll go into that farther.
Yes.
But I love writing the kids' books more than the adult books at this stage, and I think I'm better at it. I think it's just more in my wheelhouse, because it's kind of all imagination.
Right, right.
I love the kids' stuff. This series, Middle School, I think is really a classic. And if you have kids and you're watching, or grandkids or whatever, if they're either pre-middle school or middle school or just got out of middle school, in middle school, the worst years of my life. I mean, kids love it.
So let's talk about your children's series. How you got started with that, why it's important for you to be doing that at this time of your life.
Okay, big picture, and relevant to most of the people that are watching. It's our jobs to get our kids reading. It's not the school's job. School can help make better readers, but they're not the ones that are really going to make our kids read. And when my Jack, or Sue and my Jack, when he was 8, he's a very smart boy, but he wasn't a big reader. And that summer, and summer is the best time to do this, we said, you're going to read every day. And his thing was, do I have to? And he said, yeah, you have to if you want to have dinner and stuff, you know. But we're going to go out and find really cool books for you. So we went out and got Percy Jackson and Wrinkle in Time and The Warriors, which is about cats, and My Maximum Ride, and a dozen or so really terrific books. And by the end of the summer, he had read 6 or so books that he loved. And a lot of kids have never read one book that they love, but he had 6 under his belt, and his reading skills had gone through the roof. I mean, and where it went ultimately is when Jack took his SSATs, he got 800 in reading.
Wow, good.
So which is a perfect score. So he went from being a kid who wasn't terribly interested to really being a really good reader. And, you know, as individuals, we can't solve the healthcare problem. We can't solve the national debt. We can't solve global warming or global weirding or whatever you believe in terms of that. But we can, in most cases, get our kids reading. We can do that. We can do that. Parents will come up to me and always go, well, I can't get my kid reading. I go, what do you mean you can't get your kid reading? Do you get them to the dinner table? If you can get them to the dinner table, you can get them to read. You just have to make it a rule of the house. And that's not a bad thing to do.
I mean, you're not going to let a kid play
good thing to do.
You're not going to let a kid play a sport they're not good at, right? I mean, so you have to find a book that they actually enjoy. You have to find something that the kids really, reflects who they are. You can't just give them a book that they're not going to relate to. Maximum Ride, do you think that most of the young people, what age group is Maximum Ride for?
Well, Maximum Ride, there isn't an age group thing, because kids read at different levels. There are certain kids who are 8 years old that are great readers. There are certain kids at 11 and they're still not great readers. So you really have to be aware of kind of what level your child is reading. And then the subject matter, you got to figure that one out a little bit yourself, because some of the books for 14-year-olds, the content may not be what you want your 9-year-old to be dealing with yet.
For the viewers who don't know Maximum Ride is actually, the main character is a girl.
Maximum Ride, it's a bunch of kids, half a dozen kids, who were brought up in an outlaw biotech laboratory. So they were, and I talked to 30 or 40 scientists when I was writing, before I started this series, and they all said that stuff like what happens in this book, biotech things like this, will happen in our lifetime. And what happens with these kids is they've been engineered to have wings so they can fly. Now, but these wings are retracted so that they could sit here, you know, with a coat on or whatever, and just sit here and talk to you, but then, whoosh, and out come the wings. So it's a great adventure for kids to read, and a lot of adults like it too. It's very popular with adults as well. And there are crossover books like that, like Harry Potter crosses over, and Twilight crosses over, and Maximum Ride crosses over. A lot of adults like to read it, a lot of kids like to read it, because they're terrific adventures. But what they're about, for the most part, is these kids escape from this lab, and they're on their own. And what it's really about is young kids, and the kids range from like 8 to 15 or so in this group. It's about kids taking responsibility for their actions and their lives. And that's a really important thing to get your kids thinking about. Because on the one hand, we want to take care of them. On the other hand, we do want them to learn to take responsibility for why is your underwear on the floor? Why is, you know, why are you late? They need to at least start to it depends on the household.
To be held accountable for their actions.
To be held accountable.
Yes.
So in these books, these kids, they're responsible for themselves.
Well, a critic wrote something about this. It said, I'm paraphrasing, he said, you take an extraordinary event and make it believable. The characters are not superheroes, they're role models. And I really think that that's what you're really saying right now.
They're very real kids. They're certainly not superheroes. I mean, they're superheroes in the sense that they can fly, and a couple of them are fairly strong. But they're kids. And they're kids who've been brought up separated from the world. So they, you know, they're freaks. At least the world looks at them that way, and they're aware of that.
Because they're like part bird and part human, yes.
They're different. And that's a problem that they have to deal with.
Now tell me how you think we should really approach this with the young people when we have kids who are watching, you know, television. They're on their computer. I mean, every minute of the day they're either on some form of computer, and you know their attention span seems to be really out there. I don't know how do you actually change that, change the environment?
I think what you can change, and it is doable. We did it with Jack, and I actually have a program that we're going to work with the Board of Education now, where in certain middle schools we're going to have teachers, which I will pay for, who are going to stay from 3 to 5 and read with the kids.
Let's talk about that.
Not schoolwork.
You're going around. You're going around here locally now.
Yeah, it started out. I gave a speech for Suncoast and JFK Middle School.
Right.
And I really enjoyed the kids. Very bright, great questions. And it was, you know, what can I do anything? And we evolved to this thing, which we're working on, and I think it'll start in September now. We're in from 2 to 4 schools. We're going to, because we want to make sure it works. We want to get the kinks out of it before we. We'll have 1 to 3 teachers who are going to stay. They'll be there 5 days a week, just to and we will bring in 500 to 800 books. Magazines, papers, whatever, into each of these, wherever they're going to have, whether it's going to be a library or classrooms, and just encourage kids to stay from 3 to 5 and read.
Right.
They don't have to read the school books, just stuff that's going to turn them on. And what will happen is, the more kids read, the better they get at it. I'll go into schools and I'll say, "Who likes soccer? Yeah, we all, you know." Okay, better now or 3 years ago? We're better now. We're better now. Why is that? Because we play a lot. Okay, it's the same with reading.
Yes.
If you read a lot, you get better at it. And parents need to get that into their heads. And the main thing they do, and they're going to act on this once they understand it is our job. It is our job. It's my job. It's your job. It's the people's watching job to go out and find books for their kids. I have a site, readkiddoread.com. It is not about my books. That's readkiddo, K-I-D-D-O, read.com. On the site, there are like 500 books that are going to turn kids on, and they do them by age. You can go on the site, and in 3 minutes,
it's very easy. I went on the site. Very
easier.
Easy. It's wonderful.
And you will find a bunch of books in that age group for your kids. Any book that's in there is going to be pretty much a turn on, and there'll be a little write-up, not a review, just a write-up, so you'll know what the content is, and you'll be able to decide, is that something that I think my child will like, or my grandchild, or whatever. And then, you know, you pick out a few books on there with a lot of help from the site, and you go to your library or online or a bookstore, however you get books. And the other thing, you know, if you go to the library or you go to the bookstore, what I've done a few times now is I will literally put bans on my adult books that say, while you're here, don't forget your kids. We don't have that habit. Mom goes to the bookstore, Dad goes to the bookstore, Grandma goes to the bookstore or the library, and isn't thinking, while I'm here for myself, me, what about the kid? Mm-hmm. You want them to read, you got to get involved. You got to take the initiative.
When you're saying this,
and it doesn't have to cost anything. You can do it at the library.
Well, when we have infants, we read to them all the time. The little kids, when they can't read themselves, we are very good at that. Yes.
A lot of people think that's it. I'm not convinced about that. Mm-hmm. I think where the habit is formed or isn't formed is when the kid is getting enough gratification from what they're reading that they want to do it themselves.
But it seems like we dropped the ball.
I think they need to do it themselves. And I think it's really useful if they see people in the houses reading.
Yes.
If you don't have any books in your house, it's not ideal. It really isn't.
Well, we're talking about your work with some of the young students here in the middle school locally, and we have a clip actually of you talking to some of the kids here locally. Let's take a look at that.
Were you ever a good reader in elementary school?
I was a good reader. I was a good student. I didn't love reading the way I do now. And I think part of the problem was when I was going to school, we just read a lot of things that none of us liked. And I think it's really important in school that at least some of the books and some of the stuff that you read, you really love. And the minute you get done with it, you just want to read another book. I think unfortunately now, sometimes we get a little too caught up in, well, we've got to know about these 6 books because that's what the state is going to test us on or whatever, as opposed to, no, we just want to become good readers in middle school. That's really the main job, that you come out of middle school and you're really a good reader. And then, then you can branch out more. Okay, well, I want to read this kind. Or, if they taught movies in school, it wouldn't be a bad thing to do. But if they started with, like some really tough German film director, and everybody go, oh, yeah, I really don't like movies. So sometimes you want to ease into these things. You want to ease into reading with some stuff that people really like.
Well, we talked about Jack and how he, he's a great kid, and I got a chance to actually see that because we have a clip of your son, which I think is so great, interviewing his father, James Patterson. So let's take a look at, here's Jack. Let's take a look.
Can reading really change people's lives, and how?
Reading really can change people's lives, and that's the main reason that we're here, because it can change the lives of pretty much everyone watching this webcast. And there are a lot of kids watching this, and teachers watching this webcast. And what you have to understand is, one, the more you read, the better you get at it. And the better you read, the easier school is going to be, the better person you're going to be, the more interesting person you're going to be. And ultimately, the more choices you're going to have in life.
How did you feel when Jack actually interviewed you? How did that make you feel?
He's interviewed me a few times. And the first time he did it at the school for their, and he sort of did a Will Ferrell. So Dad, which was pretty funny. This time he had to be a little straighter. This webcast, and I think this is another kind of important thing for schools. This webcast went out, 90,000 kids saw it the first day, and they're continuing to show it to more schools. And I think that idea of bringing not just James Patterson, but terrific scientists and doctors and whatever into the schools in this way is, in terms of webcasts. I mean, you could, in any school, you could do 2 or 3 of these a week.
Right.
And, kids could meet people that they could never meet in real life. So I think this is a real valuable tool.
I think your work in our community is really incredible. I mean, I know you love giving back. I've read that about you, and I think that your life has been so full that it's wonderful that you're taking the time to
well, we're
really
starting,
devote
we're going to do a lot more. I mean, I'm committed to, insofar as I can help. It's always seemed to me that because of the wealth in particular in this town, Palm Beach, that we can do great things with education in Palm Beach County. And if we do it, it becomes a model for Florida. If you can establish, really high reading levels, if we could ever create a science high school, which
Yes.
I think every county should have a science high school, because you want these kids that are brilliant in science not to have that a glass ceiling.
Exactly.
You want them not to have to sit in classes where half the class is really going to kind of hold the other kids back. So and then you want that high school to also, in addition to letting them flourish in the sciences, you want there to be enough of the arts so that they become balanced and complete individuals.
So really, I mean, America's great, but we're really losing our edge a little bit, and we got to get those kids reading to really be able to have a next generation of people who are going to make a difference.
Well, we do, and I mean, the thing about you know our kids reading is they'll be better citizens, they'll be better people, they'll be more interesting people, and it just opens so many doors for them. If they can't read, high school is going to be really hard. They may not get through high school. The next step, college, will be either they won't get in, or if they don't read well. And then in terms of what you want your kids to go out and have a lot of options.
Yes.
If they don't read well, for the most part, unless they happen to be an outrageous rock and roll star, for the most part, they're not going to have as rich a life.
Right. So parents or grandparents who are watching,
Yeah.
you got to get your kids reading, because you worry about them every day of their lives, and if you
Right.
want to give them a good future, a good chance, get them reading.
There's nothing, I think, more important for the people watching it. If you really think about your kids, it's great you taught them how to ride a bicycle. That's a fine thing to do. You taught them how to throw a baseball. Cool, good thing to do. Did you turn them into readers? If you didn't, in my opinion, you're really shortchanging them. It's because I think it's probably the most important thing you can do, that they leave your house as good readers.
Thank you for spending time with us, and we look forward to hearing more about some of the things you're doing. We'll catch up with you after the summer.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed meeting James Patterson as much as I enjoyed spending time with him. We look forward to hearing him update us on his success in getting kids to read, and encourage you to go to Read Kid or Read or to wxcl.org for more information on how you can help a child journey into the world of reading. I'll see you next time.